I want to welcome you all to our program tonight. I am Sarah Carroll. I'm the chair of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, and I want to thank the AIA and the Center for Architecture for providing this opportunity for the Landmarks Commission to share our exciting news about our new permit program and new updates. I'm joined tonight by Stephen Thompson, the Landmarks Commission's Director of Intergovernmental and Community Affairs, Corey Harala, LPC's Director of Preservation, and he oversees all of our regulatory work, and Senior Preservationists Michelle Craran and Abby Hurlbut, who will be walking you through the updates tonight. But just to kick it off, I want to tell you how excited we are. Some of you probably already know that a few weeks ago, we launched Portico, which is the Landmarks Preservation Commission's new web-based permit portal that will improve customer experience for our applicants by making it easier to file an application, allow multiple users to access the same application, and receive updates on application status. And so Portico for us, it really represents an exciting transformation of our permitting process. It has a number of benefits. First, it is designed for teams. So in the past, when an applicant filed an application, there would be a primary contact, and that would be really the only person who would be communicating with our staff. Now, owners of landmark designated properties and their entire applicant team will all be able to use Portico for everything from filing applications for new permits to uploading supporting documentation and receiving final permits and approved drawings. It is also designed for ease of use. So Portico will remove any uncertainty over which application to use or which application form to use or which permit you should be filing for. It employs an application assistant or a wizard for all applications, and that wizard asks applicants a series of simple questions to direct them to the correct application process and the required materials to support the application. So Portico will also automatically direct applicants, if their proposed work qualifies, for one of the Landmarks Commission's expedited review services, such as our fast track process or expedited certificates of no effect, as well as our Business Express service. So these are services that perhaps applicants didn't know even existed. And now the wizard will actually, based on their work type, direct them to these special services. And then finally, it will provide enhanced status updates. And so I think most of the time when we hear from applicants or owners, people are interested in knowing what the status of the application is. And now anyone on the team, including the owner and any team members listed, will be able to log into Portico and view the status of their application in much greater detail than ever before. And so we will have much more specific steps that will be revealed and evident to all members of the team. And it's designed, as I said, to allow multiple users to access the same application. So property owners and their representatives will all have the same access to this detailed status information and updates throughout every stage of the process. So we're very excited about it. And as with any transformative experience, there is always a learning curve. And we have been working very hard to provide guidance and tutorials to ease that transition for our users since we launched Portico. And of course, as architects, you are critical users for us. And so again, we want to thank the AIA for providing this opportunity to share our portal with you. And before we get to Portico, I want to turn it over to Corey Harala, our Director of Preservation, who will introduce an overview of all of our updates in our regulatory processes. And then we'll turn it over to Abby and Michelle, who will present Portico and navigate the Q&A. And I also want to just say that your feedback is very, very important to us especially as we transition, but as we think about how Portico will work in the future. And so we hope that tonight We have lots of questions and feedback after the presentation. So I look forward to that. And with that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala.
Thanks, Sarah, and good evening, everyone. Since I do have a captive audience of architects, I wanted to just take a couple of minutes of your time to highlight our recent efforts with preservation fact sheets before we launch into Portico. First, we have a brand new fact sheet on major excavation and structural work, which focuses on vulnerable 19th century buildings. It's loaded with information that explains what LPC staff is reviewing and why, and clearly lays out the filing materials that LPC requires. So we are now referring more of these projects to our structural engineer for review or investigation, typically when facade reconstruction is proposed or for major gut renovations. And in other cases, and this is typically when significant excavation and underpinning is involved, we are referring projects to DOB engineers. These enhanced engineering reviews take place before we issue the LPC permit, so it's always important for applicants to prepare well in advance and work this into their schedules. This fact sheet and many more are available on our website and can be linked to through Portico if you've already started your application. Next. And in fact, we are updating all of our fact sheets in support of launching Portico, so please do check our website regularly as we roll them out. They cover many important topics like barrier-free access and energy efficiency measures at landmark buildings, detailed guidance on restoring or replacing windows and designing storefronts, and general info on the public hearing and community board review process for certain projects, among other things. In our fact sheet on installing solar panels, will now include a major update to cover solar panels on buildings with sloped roofs, which can now be reviewed at staff level in many cases, even when visible, thanks to a recent rules amendment that we adopted last summer. Those rules amendments, which also included things like more options for commercial signage, expanding tree pit installations in all historic districts, and more flexibility for energy efficient HVAC upgrades, are of course also available on our website. And so without further delay, I'll turn it over to Michelle. Thanks.
Thank you, Corey. So once again, welcome to our Portico tutorial and introduction to our new online permit portal. Again, my name is Michelle Crayon, and I'm a senior preservationist at the Landmarks Preservation Commission in the Preservation Department. And I'm also joined by Abby Hurlbut, who will help answer questions that you might have. So I'm going to take you on a tour of the website and also show you how to start some new applications. As you may know, in 2021, we launched an equity framework. One aspect of that was to ensure fairness, transparency, and efficiency in regulation. And it is our hope that Portico will be instrumental in contributing to that goal. In March 2020, you may remember that when the city offices closed, we had to quickly pivot from receiving hard copy applications in person at our front desk to a system of receiving applications via email. No more rolled drawings here at the Commission. Both of these systems included a lot of data entry and multiple opportunities for human error to occur on all sides, and only provided the primary applicant with an automated email and docket number. On top of that, sometimes emails with large attachments never came through to us, and no one on either end knew that. So not very transparent, right? Once received, LPC staff from the public information side to the front desk to preservation staff often received inquiries and requests for updates about applications, not only from the primary applicant, but sometimes from other members of the project team who were left in the dark by our old system. So we here at LPC are very excited about Portico and how it aims to solve many of those issues and help make applying with us a better experience for everyone. So let's get started. So once you follow a link or type in Portico's URL, which is portico.lpc.nyc.gov, you'll find yourself on the welcome landing page. If you're new to NYC ID, you'll need to set up a new account by clicking on Create Account in the upper right-hand corner. If you're thinking to yourself, I already have an NYC ID in my wallet, you're almost right. That's an NYC identification card. However, that is different than ID. That ID NYC is different than NYC ID, and we think that is confusing. We're in agreement. So once you've filled out that form and submitted it, you'll need to go to your email inbox, find the confirmation email shown in that inbox, and then click to confirm. If you skip this step, you won't be able to log into Portico you'll get an error page such as this. So some of you may already have an NYC ID account, and if that's the case, that's great. However, please be aware that you may need to update your information before you're able to log in. If you attempt to log in and again receive an error like this, please follow the link on this error page and update your information as noted on the error page. We've done our best to make sure that these are as specific as possible to help make it clear exactly what issue is preventing you from logging in. Some other important information regarding NYC ID. The building owner will also need to set up an account. If they do not already have an account or awareness of Portico, we'd advise applicants to give owners a heads up so that they're not surprised when they receive an email from Portico for the first time. This also goes for any other team member that you'd like to have access to viewing the application and submitting documents. And since you're no longer handing in a paper application to the owner each time you submit a new application, it may just be good practice to send a heads up to them for each new application in order to help make sure that they receive that email, sign their application, and get it to us as fast as possible. And while we're on the subject of things that NYC ID is not, let's just talk briefly about what Portico is not for. Applications submitted to us before Portico are now considered legacy applications, and during this transition time, where staff have both types of applications assigned to them, you'll need to handle those open legacy applications, exactly the same way that you have been, meaning that new materials and sample submissions will go directly via email to your assigned preservationist. Please do not open a new application in Portico to submit those new materials for a legacy docket, as this will only end up getting withdrawn. And has always been the case, submitting new materials and samples should not go to applications at lpc.nyc.gov. That was our inbox for submitting new applications and is only being monitored on a irregular basis at this point. However, post-approval actions for closed legacy applications, meaning ones that were already issued prior to Portico, will be submitted now through Portico, and I'll show you more on that later. So once you've done all that with your NYC ID, you're ready to log into Portico. So I'm actually going to take you directly to the website, and we're going to take a look at that live. So again, you'll click on this button to log into Portico. So just so you know, once you filled out your NYC ID information but are logging into Portico for the first time, there is more information specific to LPC that we'll need, and you will get a pop-up that will alert you to fill out that information. You can also update your information anytime by clicking View Profile right here in the upper right. So upon first logging in, this is what Portico will look like for all users. Note at the top right that you can choose to change the language, making it easier for users to apply whose first language is not English. Before we get into the My Applications dashboard, let's look at some other features of the website that a user might want to reference before and during the application process. So first we have the resources section, which includes links to various sections of our website, from the permit guidebook to the web map to our digital collection of designation photographs. It also has a link to those technical resources, or links to those technical resources that Corey mentioned earlier, which have recently been updated. Meanwhile, the Contact Us link goes directly to the contact page on our website. And the FAQs cover a number of questions that users might have about Portico, LPC, the application process, etc., which can all be expanded in this way and include links as well. And then lastly, we also have a link to a tutorial video, which somewhat like this tutorial runs through the basic steps for submitting an application in Portico. If you need a refresher on anything, you'll find that if you click Watch on YouTube right here, that on YouTube, the video sections are all timestamped and you can easily skip ahead to the section that you need help with. So now let's go back to the dashboard and talk more about how applicants will use Portico throughout the application process. You can see here that there are 4 tabs: awaiting my approval, draft, submitted, and completed and issued. And we'll look at those in more detail after first going through the process of submitting a new application. So let's start with starting an application. But you could also see in that previous page that there was the option to select post-approval actions, which applies to applications to file certificate of appropriateness final filing materials, requests for notices of compliance, also known as sign-offs, and for amendments to previously issued permits through both Portico and the legacy process. The first screen that you'll come to once you've clicked that allows users to select to search by address, block and lot, and building identification number, or to select for properties that don't have an address. This would be things like lampposts, parkways, etc., and are most commonly used by other city agencies. So I'll click on search by address, and this takes us to the getting started screen, which provides a thorough list of steps and instructions, and also provides a link to our map. Where you could confirm the property address if necessary. So clicking continue. Now we'll enter a search method, whichever one is preferred. Most often address is what is defaulted to, but you can also search again by borough, block, and lot, and then also by building identification number. So I will just enter our own home building, 1 Center Street in Manhattan. And you'll click search, Manhattan. And you'll click search and wait for the application to search. And then here you'll find the results where you can confirm and double check the information that you've entered. So here we're avoiding a common issue with paper and PDF forms with data entry already. So note that for some BBLs, you may have a bunch of AKAs pop up, and in that case, you can just select the preferred address for filing. But in this case, we selected 1 Center Street, and so it went directly to that address. So you'll click, and then that will allow you to continue. So at this point, it's time to enter contact information. So you can see that it already self-populated the person who was filing. And then this allows that person submitting the application to enter and edit their own information along with any relevant members of the team that they want to include, such as the architect, contractor, and of course the owner, which is required. An applicant can also be the owner, of course, if applicable. However, that only applies to actually the owner of the property. This is, of course, where an error could occur, but you do know that further in the process, the person who receives the application information will have to confirm that. So if they don't receive that email, you'll be able to go back and check the application to make sure that information is correct. So this button allows you to view the information, but you will need to click these 3 dots on the side here, known as a kebab in the computer lingo, and edit the information this way. So in this case, because I'm the applicant, I'll make myself the primary contact. And then I will click to continue. And then next we'll be able to add team members. Now, of course, we need an owner. So I will put in my colleague Abby as the owner. And you will need to enter address. And then, of course, most importantly, an email address, because they will need that in order to complete the application. So you may have also noticed when viewing the application information that you can select a POR, which is a professional of record. This is only required to be included when you're submitting an application for expedited certificate of no effect service. The POR is the person who has signed and sealed the drawings that you'll be filing and will be self-certifying that the work qualifies for that expedited service. If you have a professional of record but are filing for exterior work or work that otherwise does not qualify for ex-kine service, you do not need to select this option. You can simply include them as one of the team members under architect or engineer if you wish. One thing to note here is that this is essentially the last opportunity for the applicant themselves to add additional team members. After the application is signed by the owner, only the owner can modify or add members to the team. And the reason for this feature is that ultimately the owner is the one responsible for confirming that applicants are authorized to perform the proposed work on their property. Therefore, they're the only person who can change that information. So if you're not sure about any aspect of your application at this point, you can always go back to the dashboard by clicking Return to Dashboard. Any application that you've started will show up under the Drafts tab. To restart your application, simply click on this draft, click Resume, and it will take you back to your last incomplete page. You can also go back to any of the other pages as well as necessary. So another exciting aspect of the My Application Assistant or Wizard is that it will help guide applicants to the correct application type based on your answers to the questions. This means no more questions about forms or self-selection of the incorrect form, no more forms at all. For instance, if a user selects primary facade work, they will be correctly routed to the standard application service. Likewise, users who might not be familiar with our XKNE, Fast Track, or Business Express service previously will be automatically routed to those services based on their selections, which leads to a better experience for those applicants, of course. Note that for work that does qualify for an XKNE, we understand that some professionals of record may not wish to certify the attestation, and those applications will be automatically rerouted to Fast Track service, and I'll show you how you can reject that in a few moments. So the wizard will also automatically identify buildings with open violations, and then those applications will be routed to the standard service as they don't qualify for our expedited services. One additional thing to note at this point is that to think about the hierarchy of work when you have a larger project. If a project, say, involves both sidewalk replacement and extensive replacement of brickwork at a facade, you should default to that facade work so that the application is routed to standard service and not erroneously assigned as fast tracked due to, say, concrete sidewalk work. Now I'm just going to show you how these will route to the different services. So if I click on work occurring only at the interior at a non-commercial space, it will show automatically that I qualified for XKNE service. If I click no, yes here, again, XKNE service, but then no here, and then is the interior work associated with a commercial space? Yes, that will route me to Business Express service, or if I clicked no, then to Fast Track service if I click here for interior alterations. I will just put a floor here, and this is where you would select if you're filing with other NYC agencies, such as in many cases, of course, the Department of Buildings, and then click continue. So this next page is where you'll need to upload documents. Note that for new applications, documents are required. This will eliminate the issue of someone accidentally submitting just the application form. You can't do that. For interior alterations permit, of course, that might just be your filing drawings. But for exterior work, this is also where you'd want to add photos, specifications, etc. If you have letters or other information, this is your place to include it. You can also click this link here to go directly to our permit guidebook and review our guide to necessary filing materials for different exterior work types. So you'll click here, select documents. You can also drag and drop directly from a folder on your computer. And then you'll need to click submit and wait for the files to load. So just a note here that this lists the supported file types, and just to note, this does not include the proprietary file type used by iPhones, which is the HEIC file type, and also does not allow you to upload movies. You can attempt to do that, but once you click this continue button, what you'll notice is that those unsupported file types would not show up here. Anything that is supported, it is within the size limit. Again, here you can see these ones that won't upload, that would be missing here, and you understand that you need to change your file type or upload additional documents, which you can go back to do, add additional documents. After this, you'll click continue, and you'll have a chance to review everything that you submitted. You can click here to view the folks that you included in as your applicant contacts and all the information that you included, and you can edit any of these at this time. You haven't submitted anything yet. And then the next step is to submit to the owner. Now we'll go back to the dashboard. So once you've started submitting applications, the dashboard is going to be your one-stop shop for information about your application at each of these 4 tabs. Awaiting my approval includes applications that require your attention specifically before they are submitted to LPC. In this case, in these pending applications that are in my tab, another team member has made me the owner and also professional of record. So by selecting review details for this owner, the owner will then be able to review all of the information that was submitted, including documents, to confirm that this person was in fact authorized to submit on their behalf for the building, and that everything that they have actually said they're doing is something that they're authorized to do at the building. So next, you'll review that and continue. You can, of course, disapprove if that's not something that you authorized to happen at your building, or the owner can click to continue to approval. Confirm their own information. Confirm whether there's a facade easement, which is not a common thing, but there are some buildings in the city that have those. And if it did, you would include information about the easement holders here. So clicking no, and then continue. This is exactly the same information that was on our applications previously. When owners signed an application, they were attesting to this same information. And this is them electronically signing. Once again, they get one last chance to review and then submit to LPC. Once it's submitted, it will be sent to us to receive a new docket number. And at this point, you can't do anything essentially with the application. Now, I also mentioned that this was where a pending professional of record approval will go. So this is the same thing that you would do if you're the professional of record for an expedited certificate of no effect application. And again, this will only go into your queue for those specific applications. Now, in this case, the professional of record can disapprove it. And so you could continue to approve the same way that the owner would. And again, I'll show you that process here, where you're confirming your information. And then again, these check boxes that were on our application forms. But one thing to note here is that you do have to check all of them. If I check just one and try to continue, it will require that I submit all of these. So you would need to fill them all out, enter your name and your license number in order to continue. But again, as professional of record, you can also choose to, you have to do that before you confirm the information. You can choose to reject it, and then this would go straight to our fast track service. And then, of course, the next step would be for this to go to the owner for approval. So we already looked briefly at the drafts tab, but you'll also note that in the drafts tab, this is where you can discard an existing started application. So you can click this one where it was a pending submission, and you can discard the application this way if you just wish not to continue. You can't do that for one where the POR is already submitted and it's awaiting owner approval. So the tab where that will get the most use, most likely, is the submitted tab. In this tab, all members of the applicant team will be able to see the applications that have been submitted to LPC, regardless of which team member initiated it. This is exciting news for both staff and for the applicant teams. In the status column, we can see the current status, such as awaiting LPC docket number, materials submitted, application materials under review. application receives and pending assignment, application assigned, and additionally, additional application materials required, see materials checklist. There's also a filter feature, which allows you to search by the date submitted, the status, docket number, and as a reminder, you will need to enter the docket number with all of the hyphens included in the docket number as shown in the dashboard, or by address. And here I'm going to search this specific application to show you some more details. So to see additional information about an application that you've already submitted, you'll click View. And here you can expand all of these to see all of the application information or collapse all. And here you'll see additional information about the application. Anyone who's been added by the owner as the owner or applicant as members of the application team can see this information. Owners can have as many eyes on their application as they want or as few as just themselves. This is also the page, and here you can see information about when the materials were under review and when a preservationist sent out a materials checklist. This adds additional transparency for both the staff and applicants. This is also where you'll go to view the materials checklist when it's sent out by staff. So seen here, you'll be able to click on the materials checklist. And just like the PDF that you used to receive via email, it will have the preservationist's contact information. In this case, it's listed as Abby. In addition, in the document library, you'll be able to see LPC document archive. If there are any, this would be an old materials checklist or other information previously sent by the preservationist to you. And then also all of the applicant documents submitted. That includes anything they've submitted, as well as the application summary, which is essentially a PDF version of what was the application form that has all of the information in one PDF. And you can choose to download or print that for your records as needed. When submitting a response to the materials checklist, also known as the MCL, simply click the button in the upper right to attach documents or the 3 dots in the dashboard. You'll be taken once again to a box pop-up to upload documents. And here, just like we did when we were submitting the application, you can select files. And all you have to do is click submit. And as soon as you get the message that your documents were successfully submitted, they have been submitted to us, and they will soon show up in the preservationist's queue in their application tracking database. And it will also show up in the dashboard updated as you can here you can see it was updated right away to materials submitted, application under review. If for any reason you need to print out or save any of those documents, you can do it through the application details page. So here you can see the change in status again. So this tab also allows applicants to request withdrawal of their own applications as long as it isn't already marked as completed. This acts the same way as an email request would have previously directly to the preservationist. This information goes to them and alerts them that they can withdraw the application by clicking more. And then I'll click withdraw application. You'll be able to confirm this. And then it will change in status to withdrawal requested. And at that time, all you can do is view the application. So you'll also note that once a permit draft is under review, you can no longer submit additional information. Now, for users with many applications like expediters and architecture or engineering firms, the dashboard has that handy filter feature that I mentioned previously, allowing you to filter through many options. We have heard from some users that it can be a bit confusing when you have multiple open applications for one building. Unfortunately, the only identifying features in the dashboard are address and docket number, so you will need to determine internally the best way to track separate dockets at the same building. So once a permit's been issued, it will move to the completed and issued tab, where the users will have access to permit and approved drawings forever, or at least as long as Portico is around. No more having to contact your preservationist because of an expired link or missing it entirely in your junk folder. It's always going to be here. Users can also use this tab to begin post-approval actions by, again, clicking on the More button. And this is the feature for any application issued through Portico. Any post-approval action, both for so-called legacy and for Portico applications, can also be started using the post-approval actions button on the left. Here you'll see that you can enter by clicking Amend My Permit. You can either enter that you have a docket number or find my docket number. If you click I have a docket number, you'll note that Portico does not have access to details for so-called legacy dockets, but you can continue anyway. And that docket number will be included in the application details received by your preservationist so that they will know which permit to associate. So I will just enter a random number just to demonstrate that. You'll simply click this button and click to continue. Now I will enter a docket number that was issued through Portico. And you'll see that it was able to find this information that I can click continue. So with an application that was issued through Portico, it will self-populate the applicant team from that permit, which is great because it's less work for the user. However, you can, of course, add new members at this time, and existing can be edited or deleted using these buttons here, just like we did before. And once again, you'll need to make sure that you do have that primary contact, and no one currently is listed as the property owner. So we will go ahead and make sure that one person is listed as the property owner so that we can proceed. And make sure that they all have an applicant type, which is probably the case here. There we go. And again, if you don't have the correct information, it will in fact not let you proceed. Now that we have applicant and property owner, we can proceed. So this will also default to the same work type that for the initial permit, and you can proceed with that or change it as needed, add to it, etc. So when submitting documents for an amendment, it's important to remember to include all the same information you would have submitted via email previously, including a detailed description of the changes to the scope of work necessitating the amendment. You can include this as a Word document or a PDF for that purpose. Doing so greatly helps staff hone in on the requested changes and expedite review and issuance of your amendment letter. This process is exactly the same as it was previously with a standard application. And now I'll continue to submit this. And since I made myself the owner here, I will be able to sign the attestation at this point and submit it directly to LPC. So when filing for a certificate of appropriateness, it will look very much the same as an amendment. However, you'll be including the status update letter docket number that you were issued after the public hearing approval instead of the docket number for an already issued permit. Remember to include your DOB filing drawings and any other relevant supporting documentation necessary, including for any staff level work your drawings might show. And now let's take a quick look at filing for notice of compliance, which again is through post-approval applications. So I'm going to use that same docket number just to make things easy. Now, supposing that this permit was for interior alterations and you just need LPC sign off for DOB purposes, this is the one instance where you will be able to submit an application without additional supporting documentation. You'll click the reason for requested sign off at this time. And then, as I mentioned, this is that one instance where if you click this box saying that you are filing for notice of compliance for interior work only, at interior that is not a designated interior landmark, you do not need to upload any additional information, and you'll be able to continue to submit the application, as this is all the information that your staff member will need in order to issue that sign off. Returning to the dashboard, I wanted to talk a little bit about the submission of material samples, something many of you or your team members likely work on with contractors on a regular basis. As I mentioned, we began a pilot program in the very end of 2022 in anticipation of Portico's development and launch. Many of you have probably encountered this already. The next step will be to soon roll that feature out to all staff so that this is a consistent process across the board at LPC and so that everything is in Portico. The way this works is that when a permit requiring material samples is issued, a new samples docket will be created. Staff will indicate the materials required for submission in a permit tag and also through a materials checklist. Here you can see examples of samples or shop drawing dockets in my queue. So this checklist will be exactly like the checklist that you receive for an open application, but it will specifically list the materials that are required in order for staff to review and approve for your restorative work permit or for something that requires shop drawings. To submit your samples and shop drawings, you will simply go through the same upload process that you did for any materials checklist, either using these buttons or in the details section or in the view details section of your application. Now, lastly, I just wanted to quickly show you the search permit applications feature, which is similar to the current one on our website. This is a global search feature for Portico applications, and it shows their status. Right here, search permit applications. So this allows you to search specifically by docket number. And again, this is global, so it does not need to be a docket that you specifically were a member of the team for. There's also an advanced search feature that allows you to search through a number of ways, including address and borough, block and lot, bin, work location and borough, or even landmark and borough. And so in this case, I'll select landmark and borough. And I will select historic districts. You could select by name or simply select in one borough without a name. And this would turn up all applications in Staten Island in historic districts. You can also select to show only your own applications. This shows the details of the work types, the property, the type of application, standard, express, etc., and its review status. You can see these ones are under review. This will also let you take action on an existing application that is yours instead of going directly to the dashboard. So here you can see that this is an application that is assigned to me. And by clicking on this, I can go directly to the application details. Now returning to the dashboard, that completes my walk around. We are already seeing some great positive feedback about Portico from both staff and applicants. And at this time, we're happy to answer any of your questions.
So I've been answering some questions in the Q&A. We've had some good questions there. Unfortunately, the NOCs are not going to go straight to DOB. That'll be our next thing, hopefully. So it'll work the same way that it does now. You'll just download the NOC and things like that. The Nice ID link has been put into the Q&A in the answered portion. Let's see. An owner's representative would be filed as an applicant. Okay, so an owner's rep it's really important that we define what that is, and it is defined. An owner's rep really is only like a property management company, or if it's a co-op or a condo, a board member. Those are really the only owner's reps that we will accept. So do keep that in mind.
I guess the other instance, kind of uncommon, would be, someone with power of attorney, but we would need, legal documentation showing that that's the case for such.
And that has always been the case. Our application forms have always required the signature of the property owner, and in the case of a co-op or condo board, an officer of the board, or someone with power of attorney. And so that doesn't change in this process with the Portico.
Right. Are there any limitations on the type of team member who can be registered at an application? Oh yeah, so you can add as many team members. There can only be one owner. So, but there is a co-owner. Yeah, friend of contractor, I like that. That one would just be your regular applicant. Your generic is going to be the applicant, if you will. But we have owners and co-owners and that kind of thing. Just make sure that, if it's a husband and wife team, that you put in, or a husband and husband team, or a wife and wife team, whatever, just make sure that you put in the email address of the person who's going to sign it as the owner. Because the co-owner won't go to that person. So that can be a little tricky when you're dealing with several owners of a building. So just be aware of that. So POR, so there's no harm in checking the POR box at all. If you're the professional of record and you're signing the drawings and you're willing to self-certify or not willing to self-certify, it doesn't matter. You can always check that box. It's really but it's only required for applications that qualify for the expedited certificate of no effect, right? So that's the only time Portico is going to trip you up and say, hey, you don't have a POR, go back and go back and check that box. So for you guys, you're all, for architects, engineers, there's no harm in checking the box. Feel free to do so, so that you don't get tripped up later.
Right. And so the expedited certificates of no effect are primarily for applications that are for interior work only. And they do require the attestation that stating that the work is interior only and doesn't affect any exterior features. And so the professional of record needs to sign that form. And so if you're filing for interior work only, you do need to have it, but otherwise you can have it. You can always have it, but you need it for that type of application.
Yeah. And this is a good question too. For existing projects with LPC permits issued prior to Portico, you actually will request the NOC through Portico. Just like Michelle was showing, you're going to put in that docket number that you need an NOC for. And when you put that docket number in, you are going to get that, like, you're going to get that little thing that says, we can't find your docket number. Don't freak out. That's normal, because it's just a legacy
Just click
document.
that button.
That's okay. Yeah, you click the button, you're like, that's okay, and it'll take you through it. So definitely, from now on, any post-approval anything, even if you're amending something that was previously issued, do go through Portico.
Including if you're amending a previous permit that was issued to a different applicant. You can still
Yes.
file for an amendment.
Right. Oh, Philip, I wish. Will pre-Portico applications be imported into the system? Unfortunately, no. That's why there's a transition period going on here. So unfortunately, the pre-Portico stuff, we still have to go back and forth through email. But we're trying to get through those as quickly as possible so that everyone's on Portico, so that everyone can see all of these statuses and they can log in, and if you're on vacation, somebody else on your team can just upload stuff and be done with it. So unfortunately, that's the way of that. I'm not understanding the question about, in addition to an architect, designated individual managing a project. I think, again, you can have as many team members as possible, and I think you should. One thing, Michelle, I'm not sure that you touched on this, but it's really important to note that once it's submitted, remember the owner is responsible for everything, right?
Yes.
They're responsible for
early on.
But so once it's submitted, they're the only ones that can change anything on the application form. So like if you want to add a contractor, or if you want to change who the primary is, the owner is going to have to log in and make those changes. Sorry, Michelle, if I missed you. You had already said that.
No, it was at the beginning. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a question about if an expediter is the applicant, but not the professional of record, can they perform upload actions independently? So of course, ideally, I'm not sure if this person is asking for that sort of in response to materials checklist, or after the application is submitted. The answer is yes, except in those instances where the application is in a stage like it doesn't have its docket number yet, or the owner hasn't signed it yet. The owner hasn't signed it yet. There's specific instances where you will not see these little dots, which means you can't attach any documents. But when you have those dots, you should be able to attach documents, and any member of the team can do that. So say, the professional of record has gone on vacation, but you need to submit new materials and you have them, anyone on the applicant team can be the one submitting those new materials. And likewise, it doesn't have to be the primary applicant who's doing that. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, and yeah, it
looks like there's a follow-up here. Submitting if anyone can be the applicant submitting the initial. So the professional of record could also be the person submitting. But if the professional, let me just scroll the answered question. So I'm still not exactly sure, but the expediter can submit the original, but if the professional record is not available for, say, an ex-kine to sign the attestation, the application will kind of, again, live in that draft section of your applications, waiting for the waiting for the professional record to sign on and sign the attestation. It won't be submitted to LPC until they've done that.
Yeah, an expediter won't be able to send. I mean, you're going to have to get an owner sign it. So there's really no way around that. Like Sarah had explained, it's just that's the way of it.
So sort of think of it as the process that you currently go through to prepare an application before you submit it to the Landmarks Commission. Now you'll sort of be doing that in our portal. So we'll see some of your activity that we never had access to before. We'll see that you've started a draft, that you're starting to upload materials, that it's gone to the owner for a signature, or in the case of a permit for interior work only, where it's eligible for an expedited certificate of no effect, that it's gone to the person identified as the professional of record for signature. So that's all sort of process that happened outside of LPC in the past. That was when you were preparing your applications, you'd work independently with the owner to get their signature, and then you'd put the package together and submit it to the Landmarks Commission. And so in Portico, you will be able to do all of that preparing through the portal before you submit it. And so that's the way to think about it. You can start to prepare it and upload whatever you want, and put the information in there while you're awaiting those signatures. And then when those signatures are obtained, then the application will be submitted to LPC, and then it will then come into our docketing process and be assigned to a staff person the way it is now when you email the application package to the Landmarks Commission. So sort of think of the portal as an assistant to help you prepare the application so that it has a better, so that it can be more complete when it comes in. And then once it's assigned to a staff person, hopefully the process will be more efficient because the wizard will have helped you to complete the application in a way that maybe you didn't have the information on how to do so before. So it's that whole draft period is something that you did independently. Now you're able to do it in Portico, and hopefully the wizard provides you enough information so that once it is officially submitted, we can process it much more quickly.
I see a few more questions about team members and things. There was a question about, a team usually consists of an architect, a project manager, tech staff. You can identify them however you wish. But if your application qualifies for an ex-Kine, you're going to want to make sure you identify who the architect is or engineer, because those are the only two that can be the professional of record, because those are the only two that have the license, right? So that's what we're looking for. You have to put in your license number, people who are licensed, right? So, but you can have 300 architects if you want to on your project. Like, you can have as many team members as you wish. I don't want to be that person who is filling that out for 300 architects, but hey, if that's what you want, feel free. We can have as many team members as needed. And that's on purpose because, especially Michelle had mentioned the samples dockets. When it comes to samples, your expediter probably isn't useful at that point anymore. It's really the architect and the contractor. So you might want to add a contractor to your samples. Like, you might want to have the owner who hires the contractor add that person to the samples docket so that they can upload things and work with you guys, especially for that. So that's kind of how you want to think about it. As the owner hires more people, you might want to add more people to Portico. So let's see here.
And just to add on to that about assigning like a name, so to speak, to each team member, just from a preservationist standpoint, it's helpful to have the actual architect label as architect if we have a specific question about the scope of work that we can contact. We know who the architect is, and we can contact both the primary applicant, but also the architect directly, and sort of, cutting out that additional time that it takes to go between multiple people. So that's just sort of, from our perspective, a helpful bit of information to have.
So there is a follow-up question about how do you think it's going to work getting an owner to add or delete application information on Portico, the question goes on to say that it's difficult to get owners to make the time to sign the application, but having them proactively do work on Portico sounds difficult. And so, right, and then there's a note, it isn't really a question, but I wonder how I can get my owners willing to participate in what Expeditors always used to do. So the owners, again, don't have to do all of the work. You, as the applicant, can file all of the application materials, answer all of the questions, upload the documentation, and then at the end of the process, when you're ready for the owner's signature, you click that you're ready, and an email will be sent to the owner saying that this application requires signature, and they will have to log in, look at it, and they'll see what it is and what materials have been submitted. And all they have to do is click yes, or I authorize this and submit. So they don't have to proactively do all of this work. You, as whoever is the primary team member or other team member, can add and prepare the package the way you do now, and the owner just has to authorize it the way they do now. And so the tool should help you in preparing that package. It should make it easier to put those materials together because you will have more guidance along the way.
Well, and hopefully the owners have hired you because they want work done. And so that's the hope, I guess. But I understand your concern. And everyone's different again.
It looks like there was a follow-up on that same one about amendments. So for amendments, you can change, it will self-populate. If it's an amendment to an existing to a Portico application, a Portico permit, it will self-populate the information from that, but you can change all of that. So it's self-populated to in effect make it easier to have those people's information already in there, but that can all be changed by the person submitting the amendment.
All right, and there's a question, can the PO...
And it doesn't have to be the owner.
There's a question, can a POR or applicant be substituted mid-application should the need arise? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, that happens
but
all
only
the time.
by the owner specifically.
And yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the process for projects that will need to go to public hearing and LPC commission, it's going to be very similar to the way it is now, frankly. There will be probably some emails back and forth. There will probably be some maybe sort of added lines to the checklist that may have gone in an email, but is now in a checklist so that others can see it too, and can jump in and do what they need to do. Hopefully it'll make the process go even faster. But it'll be very similar to the way it is now. You'll still just apply the way that you do now.
Yeah, and once it has been assigned to a staff person and it's identified as something that requires a public hearing, as Abby said, they'll send a checklist and also, provide information on how to modify it to make it staff level. But if it is something that needs to go to the full commission, the staff will then contact you and meet with you as they always do.
Yeah, and I think you'll notice, those of you that have used it already, the MCLs still have the staff person's email at the bottom. So if you have any questions and you're like, can you please clarify what you mean by XYZ, you can always email them. It's just that you can't submit materials through emails. You just want to make sure that you're asking clarification questions. And that's perfectly fine. The building department ID is not the same as NICE ID. What kinds of violations would hold up an application? The same that happens right now. We don't generally hold up applications for health and safety or restoration work. But if there are violations on the property, it's up to the owner to really prioritize those. And the violations will show up in Portico, and you'll be able to see them. So this time, like, you won't be blindsided. I have a feeling that many of you here have been blindsided by a violation you didn't know existed on the property. When you're going through this, the application assistant, yeah, she'll show you.
Yeah.
Is gonna show it. It's gonna be the first question that you get if a violation is found. So the nice thing for you guys is that you won't be blindsided anymore. You'll know that something is there. And then it kind of gives you a leg up. You can say, hey, I can see that you have, a signage violation. Well, we're working on this other storefront together. Do you want us to work on this as well? It's a good way to engage with your client, see if that's something that, maybe they forgot about it. Who knows? But that would be, it's going to work the same way. It's just going to show up first so that you guys aren't blindsided.
And once again, in this instance, there is a direct link to the email address for our enforcement department. So if there are questions about that, that will show up here. One thing that Portico does not do is it does not automatically hold up your application. That is still something that happens once it's been received and assigned. But what I mentioned before is that what it will do is it will route your application to standard service, because buildings with violations do not qualify for the expedited services.
Right. And contractors can submit samples for review and approval. Absolutely. Again, that's something that, as long as they're part of the project team, they can upload things, and the revised materials checklist will go back with what was approved and when, for the whole team to see. So that way it's great for building owners, so that they can keep it and take it with them and say, this is the brick that we used last time, go buy that brick. And hopefully it'll make these projects go faster. Why does LPC want to see backyards and what colors? Because we regulate the entire building. We just do. So it's all the way through. So we need to see everything.
And if you're familiar with our rules, there is sort of a hierarchy of facades. So the rules for staff level approval, and even when we review things at full commission level, the work on the front facade is looked at sometimes more carefully than the work on the secondary facades, particularly if they're not visible from a public way. And so in those cases, we allow for a lot more flexibility, but under the law, as Abby said, we do regulate the entire property. And we have to write permits for it, all of the work.
Yeah, and there seems to be a follow-up with the violations. Do current LPC violations pass through Portico if there isn't an existing LPC filing and the owner received violations after purchasing the property? Yeah, the violations are populated in Portico for sure. Once it's in DOB, when it's going to be in Portico, it'll be found. So you'll see it, they'll see it. So that's a good thing, I think. I hope I answered that question. Getting owners to sign stuff for DOB now is a choking point. Potentially. Honestly, we've found that a lot of our managing agents and like those guys are moving fast through Portico. We've seen lots and lots of owners submitting quickly. So, and I think it's just because it's nice. It's right here in their dashboard. They can just go boom, 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 right through their queue, and they're done in seconds. Hopefully it'll be easier to use than DOB now. I think we've heard that in general it is, and that people tend to like it. And we hope you guys will too. So for applications related to a cooperative, can any member of its board be registered as, yes, as the owner? Yes, that's the definition of co-op owner, anyone who's on the board.
An officer of the board.
Right,
Right.
an officer of the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah,
Doesn't
and
matter.
often,
So it could be multiple people if, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the same exact person for each application.
These are really great questions. Thank you all.
Mhm.
Looks like we're wrapping up.
okay.
Give a
I think that concludes the questions. Thank you very much for the questions. They're very helpful. They're helpful for us as we continue to ease the transition and provide guidance. It helps us to hear the questions so that we know what information to provide on our website or through our other tools. So we do appreciate the feedback. Abby and Michelle have been fantastic leaders of our outreach team, but we do have staff on board to support applicants who have questions. So please continue to share your feedback and questions with us. We welcome the feedback. And we appreciate everybody attending this evening, and we hope you have a wonderful experience with Portico and share our excitement.